Gives me great pleasure to have two of my former students, two of my favorite students, as I'm doing this piece where I'm bringing these young people in that I used to work with, just to say that, I ain't new to this, I do this. And so it's great to have you ladies in the studio. So go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Well, my name is Taylor Brown.
And I am Donesha Tinsely.
Oh man, they got real quiet on me. You should have heard them just before the tape was rolling. I thought they was coming for my
I'm
shirt
following
and
Taylor's lead.
So,
this is my first time doing this, so
I'm kind of mine too.
Oh, man.
You're Taylor Brown, and continue.
The bravado was thick. You could cut it with
It
a knife.
was.
But that's all good. So again, let's just talk about this again, because for those that may not know, I used to teach at Genesis School. That's where I cut my teeth as an educator, and so for me, it was a place to grow as much as it was for us to allow for young people to realize their next steps. And so, at what point in time were you ladies at Genesis? You remember? Both of y'all look like you.
2000s. No,
Oh my
So
God.
I remember distinctively because I went to Genesis after being expelled from a charter school. We won't say the name. From a charter school in the
We'll
Kansas
put it in
City
the
area.
subtitles.
Mr. Brown is like, I'm saying the name.
And it was a very I don't know, it was a big moment in my life. So I had been to private school all throughout grade school up until middle school, then went to this charter school. It was kind of a cultural shock, I would say. Not terrible experience, but it was definitely like a big experience for me. That didn't work out. And then I found Genesis, and that's where I spent my 8th grade year before going to high school.
My experience with Genesis, I found Genesis after I actually went to a public school in the school district, and I didn't do well my 6th grade year, so I ended up having to repeat my 6th grade year, and so
I didn't
that's
know
why,
that about you.
Yeah, I ended up having to repeat my 6th grade year, so that's why that's how I ended up at Genesis, and was kind of able to. They didn't have that stigma there. Like nobody, like you said, like nobody knew like I wasn't in my right grade, and that was definitely my reality. And so Genesis helped me get back on track and helped me graduate, so that way I
Have you
could
ever said that out loud?
Yeah.
I mean, now I do. Like in high school I didn't talk about it, or middle school I obviously didn't talk about it, but now it's like it's just a part of my journey, so it's nothing to be ashamed of anymore.
Okay. Cool.
But that's interesting that like you going from private school to like a more public.
It was a
middle
huge
school,
culture shock. It was huge.
And I just think middle school in general was a culture shock for me. Like just the freedom of middle school, like moving from class to class, and then just
Like it was, I could see that.
just the
a
whole
big
entire
adjustment.
experience.
I had never seen a fight before until I had went to University
Wow.
Academy.
And it's the stigma of being placed in an alternative education, like you can't function with regular students or in a normal environment. Just that stigma that comes along with it.
Maybe because of the word alternative, other than different.
Well, again, I mean, and that's the thing. And when I thought about it, and I had to, really rationalize it in a different way, because if I was say on I-70 and there was a crash on I-70 and it was stopped, then I would have to take an alternative. Then there's nothing bad about that. Now, again, my time might be longer because there was something that happened on this regular path that made me take a detour, but ultimately I'm going to get to my destination if I keep moving forward. And so if we again take away those stigmas, then we see that the types of things that every young person should be engaging in is the type of stuff that we was doing for young people at Genesis. So I just wanted to, just park on that real quick. But again, even just the idea, Genesis means, beginning, and we always thought about that as a new beginning in just the way that we use that term. So again, because for me, like I said, I was new, so it was my Genesis as well. So it was always a lot of learning, and that was one of the things that we did as staff is continuously, educated, collectively and individually. So what were some of the things that you ladies were involved in at Genesis?
I participated in African drumming and dance, and I also participated in the digital media club.
Talk about those experiences.
With the African, I can't remember do you remember what the name of the group was?
Jolly Kunda.
Jolly Kunda.
Man, ooh,
I
boy. I'm going to make sure I tag Miss Vanessa, Sherry Bird. I'm going to tag everybody in the Traditional Music Society to make sure
it was the
that...
Traditional Music Society, but I couldn't remember, like, the name. But I do remember learning about African history and how that really was a core memory for me and kind of really set me on it just kind of set the trajectory for like a lot of things that I would do in the future, and I didn't realize the impact at the moment that those things would have on me. But we would just go around, perform different places. We would learn the historical context behind the different songs we were singing and the dances we were doing. There were patterns we would get to wear. And so it was just this experience of one, it's a team, and so you're learning teamwork, you're learning to cooperate with people, you're learning performance, and so you're developing all of these skills. And so that was super important. And with the media club, we had the opportunity to travel a lot during school, to different town hall meetings, and so you just kind of had that. You got exposed to the things that were going on around you, and Genesis created a place where we could have those conversations and just be open-minded.
So when you first asked that question, I was like, oh, shoot, what was I a part of? Even though I was a part of a lot. But I think Genesis was the beginning of me tapping into this creative space that I didn't know I had, because I've always come from a more traditional family, book smart, read, do your times tables and math sort of thing. So
well, you were a good student. And Taylor, she once got offended when I said, well, Donesha's a better student than you. But I mean,
I was like, excuse me.
But she's a better student than me too.
No, you are
so
a better student than me.
That's and I mean in the sense of completing the assignment and getting the work done and making sure it's going to be the teacher said this in the syllabus. I completed all of those tasks, and so in that sense of being a student, you were always good at that. So again, and that also speaks to how people are able to follow through. So again, my trajectory in college wasn't a straight lateral freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, so I had some pitfalls. And I mean, that was one of the things that brought me into education because of those pitfalls, because I'm like, I shouldn't be struggling like this. And it's probably a lot of young people that's coming from the inner city that's gonna encounter this college experience that needs to know that, hey, it's okay, and you can definitely move beyond those things.
And I think even so with that, every experience or moment that you have, you can take and learn something from it. If it was not for Genesis, I wouldn't have known to go to Paseo and audition in the theater program because of those plays that Mr. Caldwell wrote, right? That's what Genesis gave me, right? That didn't exist.
The seed?
It was the seed. Wait, hold on. He had whole scripts now, booklets. I didn't have that at the charter school, right? I didn't have that at the private school. Genesis really did plant that seed in me. So, I guess I still am though, a little bit is it there? Was I doing that? But I definitely was.
Yeah.
Again. I mean, and just the other piece was just the social side of things, because who knew you was going to come there and find a lifelong friend?
Yeah. Sister.
Cousin
for the haters.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, my goodness. And just sitting here, you can imagine that I've had to put them out of class before.
It's the best experience of my life.
Getting put out of class by this.
I am not talking about that. I am not prepared. He was like, I can't believe these fools. They really tried me. It was like a standoff.
We could not stop laughing.
We couldn't. That was pure joy.
You should have been happy that you created an environment where we could thrive and be so happy.
That was early black girl joy.
Are y'all hearing this?
Because we could not control our laughter. We just could not turn it off. And
we
then
could
Mr. Brown was
not.
like, get out.
It was like,
I've never know Michael Jackson.
No, you were
Right.
up.
And then we went out to the
Oh,
hall.
yeah, I was definitely appalled.
Then we went out to the hall and was laughing some more. And then he came out with the door, he almost killed him.
Okay, and to give like a picture of the context, right? We were like supposed to be like the smart kids, the one who did everything right, the go-tos. Look at them, you know, the pupils to look at, and we just we were kids, we were young people, and we were each other's safe space.
Good times.
Good times.
Well, I feel like I need to put them out now, but we got a podcast to do. Again, so now, you know, let's fast forward, and you know, one of the things that we've had conversation about and look to is you know, just international travel. And so, again, not just Genesis, but also Paseo High School, those teachers and those experiences that impacted you guys. So as we look and just talk about the idea that all of us have, you know, sought and get this idea about international travel, what are those seeds that were planted in your mind and planted in your you know, your experiences that allow for you to say, yeah, man, I want to see the world, I want to travel the world, and I'm going to make sure that that's something that happens?
I would never forget going to go see Charlotte O'Neal of the Black Panther Party here in Kansas City. Her and her husband, Pete O'Neal, were Black Panthers here in Kansas City, and they had to flee to Tanzania, Africa, in exile. But we met Charlotte O'Neal at was it De La Salle High School, and a group of their students were going to Tanzania. They took a 2-week trip, and they had the opportunity to climb Mount Kilimanjaro and just meet Pete and to hear all these stories and you know, just really get this cultural exchange experience. And I just remember watching they had this big kind of like this big, I don't even know what to call it, but Charlotte was there, and we went and we interviewed her, and we got to watch the young people's journey. And it was that was a core memory for me as well. And I just remember in that moment, like, interviewing Charlotte and just being so in awe of her and what she done, but also knowing to myself that, like, I would physically go to Africa.
Wow. Where were you at that time when you interviewed her?
And we were in the gymnasium at De La Salle High School, and we had just got done watching the 2-week journey that the students had took. And being a part of the media program, we had an opportunity to go interview Charlotte for the radio show. And so I got an opportunity to talk to her.
Okay. So you were at Paseo.
No, I was at Genesis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But full circle moment, I had an opportunity to meet with Charlotte a couple of months ago. She was here in the States, and she and I met again, and she invited me to Tanzania, which is really awesome, which will be a real full circle moment when I finally get to visit her and Pete in Tanzania.
Wow. That's awesome. Well, my story is not as...
Well,
No, your story is that. What are you talking about?
So I was introduced to a world outside of my walls and my community and my neighborhood, honestly, first through you. My first experience of really understanding this world of, like, Africa and travel and all of that, I will never forget you crying about these kids being hungry.
I do remember that.
Do you remember that?
Yes.
Like, you
It was
really
the
had a
Forte
moment.
class. Yeah,
And we
so
had to,
sad.
like, so that was my first experience of knowing, like, wow, there are people outside of my space and what I can see. But I didn't really start to travel until college. I remember you guys took, like, that senior year trip in high school, and I didn't go.
Yeah.
That was you introduced me first to, you know, a world outside of ours. I didn't travel in high school because I was just definitely still working a lot and figuring out what I was supposed to do next, because I knew I had to do something next. And then college introduced me to travel. And that really just started with New York City. And what better place to first go when you think about traveling in the States?
some of the places that you've been and some of the experiences that you had.
Italy. That was the first place I went international. Being my European self, yes, of course. So this is great. This gives polar opposites.
Yes.
My first take going to Italy internationally by myself, mind you, and I went to 3 different places in Italy. I went to the Amalfi Coast, I went to Rome, and I went to Florence. And especially in Florence, I literally, and I've said this so many times, I felt like I was Michelle Obama or Beyonce there.
Love that.
Like, they looked at me like I was walking off of Ebony magazine. It's not every day that they see Black women, and not only was I a black woman first, I was very evident like an American black woman there. And they were like, wow, bellissimo, can I help you? Like, I was getting free food and everything, and it was just like, oh my goodness. I remember being on the bus trying to navigate getting to downtown Rome, and like people on the bus was just like looking at me. This one guy asked for my autograph and called me Miss America.
I love it.
Right? And it may sound superficial, but when you come from a place of like having insecurities about your skin color and about your hair texture, and to just go to this place and you were just celebrated, not because I'm just light skinned and just, you know, all these insecurities that I've had growing up. It's just, wow, look at you, you black American woman, you are beautiful.
Yeah.
So that was my experience, and I look forward to going back.
I loved it. My first experience, I kind of did a similar thing. My first international experience, I went to, the first country I landed in was Turkey, actually. And this is before I really knew what I was doing. So like I literally went all over the world to go to end up in Senegal. So I stopped in Turkey for a couple of days. And so I got an opportunity to, and I was actually, it was not a great experience, honestly. But it was an experience. So I went to Turkey for a couple of days, and then from Turkey I went to Spain, and then from Spain I spent a few days in Madrid, and Madrid was lovely. Like it was incredible. And then from Spain I went to Senegal, where I ended up spending a little over 30 days in Senegal, and so that was where I ended up. But that was my first international experience.
30 days, wow.
And so, yeah, again, for me, my first international experience was through Genesis and taking students to Burkina Faso, West Africa. And so just the idea of students having a worldview and staff having a worldview, that was something key. It's not something that you say all the time, but then sometimes it is something that you, boom, hey, you guys need to think bigger than just what's around here on 43rd and Cleveland, and making sure that the people that are teaching are thinking bigger than 43rd and Cleveland. And so that way, no matter if you were that kicked out kid or that troubled kid or that kid from that broken home or whatever that's supposed to mean, you know, you still have folks in front of you that got insight that is worldly and still want to impart that to you. And so that becomes huge in the process. So just before we move off the international piece, talk about your trip to the is it the DR?
Yes,
Tell us
go
about
to the DR. So I did a medical mission trip right before deciding to go back to grad school. Again, just went by myself. I went with like a local group, religious group, because that's usually kind of who does the mission trip. So it was a mission trip. It was an amazing experience. It was the first time that I had ever seen real landfills, like right next to these people's homes. And these people like living in shacks, and they line like a line outside of where we're doing the medical treatment that day, and they wait for hours. And a lot of them, what's most interesting, a lot of them are not necessarily in physical pain or needing emergency services. They just know this is their opportunity to get Tylenol. This is their opportunity to get prenatal vitamins. This is their opportunity to get whatever additional medication they may need for their children. What you do see common in the women is that some of these women come in and have really bad complaints of like menstrual cramps and different things like that, and it's because they bore children at a very early age, 15, 14, and they've had 3 or 4 kids, right? And the most that we were able to do was like, okay, well, here's some medication that we can give you in the meantime, and we'll write you a script to be able to go see a doctor. And we're doing this, imagine, in the Dominican Republic, in what anyone else in America would consider a shack. No air condition, none of that. And another thing that was really cool is being the medical professional there. We had a physician there, but for the most part, we would look, assess, and make the judgment call of what we thought they needed, and then tell whoever was on the team of the pharmacy team that this is the medications that we wanted. So that was an amazing experience and something I hope to do again.
That is cool.
And so, why did you think that was an experience? Because obviously, that was a volunteer experience.
It was.
And so, why did you think that was a good
I'm
experience?
a real one. I went to the Dominican Republic 2 weeks before I went to Italy, and I said if I treat myself to Italy, I always find a way to find balance and to ground myself. I better go do some type of service before.
I
So I
love
went to the
that.
Dominican Republic before. That was a good year. Look at you. Look. You look like a proud educator. Oh.
Y'all are just determined to have some kind of awe moment with me. And
I just want you to lean into it.
all right, so Taylor, let's talk about your experience. You know, we know that you went to synagogue. Well, some people know. I'm talking about we. Everybody.
You know, I'm out here like that. No, I'm
Anyway,
joking.
we have to be careful. Remember, this is Marcus Brown's niece sitting here. So talk about your experience going to West Africa and the group that you were.